Good morning to all of you, distinguished gentlemen, ladies, and of course, best wishes to your respective professions and organizations which you represent. Very beautifully attired, of course, I had to change into my business wear as well. When we talk about my part, or my neck of the woods. So, before we get into the actual discussion, I just wanted to contextualize very quickly, given the shortness of time, where we'd want to position this talk about food security for Trinidad and Tobago. And each slide has a message, so you can look at me or the slides, whichever you prefer. The picture there shows a field. Anybody can identify very quickly what that is? No? Sesame Street was able to identify what that is. That's pineapple production in Trinidad and Tobago. And I hope that all of you appreciated that we were able to attract Sesame Street to the shores of Trinidad in 2017. We have done so in the past for aspects of Carnival, as you may or may not know. And we've spent billions of dollars over the years on Carnival. And in my mind, agriculture has now become the greatest show on earth. This is why they came. And we have done very little, if anything at all, to capitalize on the opportunity. So, just to put things into context, we spend billions of dollars. We spend a lot on national security in Trinidad and Tobago, millions around the world, to combat terrorism. But who or what can save us from ourselves? You know, we would be at a loss if we believe that the murderers, the bandits, and everybody else live in homes that do not have burglar proof. They don't have alarm on their cars and so on. It's not only you and I. Somewhere in the world this morning, there's an equal human being that's discussing how to create or how to build the next aircraft. We are here at Hilton, Trinidad and Tobago to discuss a future based on catching fish, making pepper sauce, buffalo milk, rice. These are some of the headlines we saw recently in relation to the sector. Even as our country's foreign reserve was depleted, or is depleted to US 7.9 billion, making it the lowest recorded figure in the last decade, as the governor of the central bank recently discussed. He said there's no need to worry. Interestingly, Trinidad and Tobago imports food and agricultural commodities. Since 2014, we've exceeded $1 billion US per year. Dr. Roger Hussain of the University of the West Indies, he said recently that there's a rise in cost of crime, which we pay little or no attention to. It runs into the billions given his estimations. But of course, he's assuming that the thousands of murder victims were either employed or actively seeking work in the formal economy. Because if their shortened life is a loss, an economic loss, of course, they're supposed to be participating in the economy in a meaningful way. We've, of course, in reckless abandon, never understood what happens when a farmer dies in this country. And there's, of course, increasing violence against the farm and activities it's related to. So, if you look at the headlines, you follow my activities on social media and so on, we will document very often, not only Pradia larceny, which is a small subset of that violence, but of course there's a lot of untold stories. And I'll tell you just a few very quickly. Sarwan Lakshman, a very young and prolific pineapple farmer of the Lagoria estate, died in a vehicular accident in 2014. He left a young family. Jerome Danraj, similar circumstances in 2017. He is the son of Danraj Lobin. Unknown to many, he's of course, I believe, arguably Trinidad and Tobago's the largest watermelon producer. Ricky Gangada, prolific farmer as well, based in Barco, he was shot. Bison had trampled his cornfields and so on, and he tried to remove the animals. There was a conflict. He survived the ordeal. The champions today was, of course, there's no justice, as we often hear. The 400th murder victim in 2017 was a farmer, Shamanan Gosai. He was shot actually on his farm in St. Madeleine, a stone's throw from the police station. About 2 or 3 weeks ago, we lost Shahid Mohammed, a mature guy, of course, a wealth of indigenous knowledge, 50 acres of pineapple production. Ruben Suku, still alive, thankfully, but of course he's migrating from Trinidad and Tobago. He was and is the owner of a shade house for his own nursery production. And he has a hydroponic system that we speak to the alternatives about. The Tobago House of Assembly is driving a project right now based on the ideas and so on. 10,000 plants, that's 10,000 lettuce per week. That's one individual could produce. He is leaving Trinidad and Tobago in a few days. So while these are just limited information and so on, we don't have information on the lives of all our farmers and fishers and so on in this country. And that is also a cause for concern. So there is no sensitivity to the issues that we face. So if it is, we speak to our population and we say an individual is unable to read or write and so on, we say that they are illiterate. And in the world of financial literacy, if you don't understand money management, entrepreneurship skills, all the related facets, we say that they are financially illiterate. And if we do not know where our food comes from, how it is produced, and we do not respect the circumstances of the men and women who feed us, we are illiterate. Agriculturally illiterate. Yeah? So we have to consider three questions before I get into the crux of the presentation, which is, what are the contribution of these farmers and their families to the national food basket? 50 acres of pineapple production, 80 acres plus of watermelon and so on. And of course many crops, so 3 crops per year and so on. What is the impact on farmer motivation if one farmer is to die, if violence against the farm has increased and so on? How are they motivated for the next crop cycle to make investments? We here to discuss confidence and so on. If they lose confidence in their activities, who loses? Is it that their pockets lose, or is it that the national food basket is at a loss? And of course, when they die, when they leave, who replaces that production, that indigenous knowledge for the benefit of the people of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago? Nobody here decided to plant 50 acres of pineapple within the last 3 weeks. Yeah? So, I was asked to talk about 4 broad things, but I would just want to drop all of that into one thematic area, which is people are demanding more local food. There's no shortage of demand for food in this country, so the issue is no longer a demand side issue in my opinion, it is a supply side issue. And what we need to discuss is, can we feed them? If everybody in this room made a concerted effort to say, from tomorrow morning I will eat 100% local, what happens in Trinidad and Tobago? Yeah? So, we are in an era of our developmental history where the conversation has gone beyond simply eating local, promoting agro-processing, etc., to determining whether or not we can meet the needs of consumers and industry for affordable food and raw materials to sustain, by extension, the people of Trinidad and Tobago. It is the fact that we have failed to invest in the productive capacity of the sector to meet the needs of industry for food processing and manufacturing. We have also failed to develop the subsectors in which we possess a comparative and competitive advantage, such as the basic fruits and vegetables, meats including seafood, eggs, ground provision, rice, etc., just to list a few. We perhaps have only been able to approximate the subsistence level of agriculture, at least within the last decade. So while change, both price and quantity, is uncomfortable for many, why not consider a supply-side approach, finally setting the right policy environment, matched by investment, is just trying to stifle consumer demand to meet their tastes and preferences. And that is just simply, don't demonize people for eating imported food. How can we begin to supply to meet their needs? So for many years we've given much lip service, of course, to the importance of the sector, its far-reaching links to sustainable livelihoods, rural development, the environment, the diversified economy, food and nutrition security for Trinidad and Tobago and so on. But the country's position of declining foreign exchange earnings and reserves, already described, has allegedly put greater pressure on our capacity to import, although the food import bill continues to rise. But while it rises, there is serious misinformation, in my opinion, in the public domain, perhaps even a misunderstanding of the situation at a policy level. So, food imports must be understood in relation to essential products, which simply cannot be produced locally, significant intermediary products and concentrates, which service the local manufacturing sector, food and beverages for the high-end market and so on. But importantly, it considers the influx of primary agricultural commodities and products that directly compete with farmers, fishers, and entrepreneurs. For example, according to UN Comtrade statistics, we would have imported over $231 million in bananas and plantain from a few CARICOM regional partners. So, as I say publicly and repeatedly over the years, while politicians and policy have seemingly attempted to promote local food production, we have simultaneously given greater facilitation to other sectors that demand the imported inputs. Tomato paste, for example, is a classic example. It arrives at the port of Port of Spain, it goes to the Diamond Vale Industrial Estate, but we can buy a pack of ketchup some in Mayaro, Guava, and so on. But nobody discusses the thousands of jobs that business line would have created. So when we say more local, e-local, whatever, and reduce the food import bill, how are we going to replace those jobs, whether or not menial, across the country? We haven't spoken about value chain development and so on. So reducing that import dependency without strategic action is of course simply futile, and it does not address intermediary products. We only think that the food import bill is comprised of goods for final human consumption, which is far from the truth. So after several years of fiscal budget deficits, we run that continuously, and economic hardship, damage to the major food producing areas from flooding, dilapidated infrastructure and so on, is a burden to maintain this dependency on food imports, coupled with food price inflation and the urgent need to return value back to rural and agricultural communities. So in order to systematically reduce the reliance on food imports or food products to bolster own capacity, there must be a fundamental shift in the sector's priority, raising it on the national development agenda, which is supposed to be, or hopefully is supported by an overarching national policy framework for sustainable agriculture and rural development. The policy includes identifying strategic programs and projects aligned to measurable outcomes, its financial and technical resources. We must be mindful, of course, of the history of neglect associated with the sector. So in the recession times, we cannot just fall back on agriculture. We have not invested in the capacity to meet the needs at any random time. So even today, as we consider the fiscal budget and so on, and looking ahead and in the current anticipated economic circumstances facing Trinidad and Tobago, we cannot deny the reality of hardship and the cost of living and so on that is associated. So the usual call, or the call must remain, and we must maintain that call on policymakers to do more to preserve food and nutrition security at the household level, protect and strengthen the men and women who feed us, which are the people I just described, and of course to act aggressively to stabilize sentiment and build consensus on a way forward. So with the understanding that the sector can only move forward through consultation, collaboration and coordination, there are several things we could do. In the short run, as net income falls, we hear about rising unemployment, graduates can't get jobs, all the issues we hear. We need, of course, one is to educate people on the ground of the implications we face because of the economics of the day versus fear-mongering. There's a lot of propaganda. Mr. Broderick described the headlines that we see and so on. But really, if you speak to the people, the average people on the roadside eating doubles and so on, there's a lot of misinformation that they hold on to in terms of where we and how their purchasing power is impacted. For example, by credit ratings, by national debt levels and so on. We could incentivize greater local content in food production. We've tried contract farming, but of course, there's no follow-through in some of these things. The analysis has shown that we have an agricultural incentive program, but if you look at the analysis, it's dubious as to in fact whether or not that program in its current form can or has influenced the production of commodities while negatively affecting others. So we've tried to support everything in the sector, but we have not driven specific sectors in a way that we can now measure its impact of that public spending to look at efficiency gains and so on in market development. So moving the conversation along, in terms of food security, we need to identify, or are we even able to identify, a connection between higher food prices and poverty. We know that food prices are rising, we know that there are serious social issues in the country. We look at vagrancy in the capital city as a minor example of what exists in the wider country and especially in rural areas and so on. So given the greatness of the sector to promote economic growth, environmental protection and poverty alleviation, there remains a need for greater public education, awareness and engagement on the local food industry as a cornerstone of prosperity, but not only for people but of course as a country as a whole. So it is possible that consumption patterns in rural and economically distressed areas are highly vulnerable to national declines in production and increases in food prices as households may fall easily from borderline to poor consumption, both in quantity levels of food and in their nutrition in the wake of any disaster and so on. So, but at the same time, an acceptable consumption pattern is difficult to reach and to maintain. The relationship could also be understood with the reduction of purchasing power for everyone A burden felt most, of course, by fixed income earners, retirees, and the vulnerable who have limited options within their livelihood portfolio. So, in summary, to keep food and nutrition security on the agenda, and of course, to keep food affordable in Trinidad and Tobago. This thing about cheap food is a myth. People like to see lower prices, but of course, remember the other side of that dollar is the income for farmers, fisherfolk, entrepreneurs, and so on. So, I listed some of the things in context of the purpose of this seminar, which is, one, I think we need a comprehensive, overarching national policy framework for sustainable agriculture and rural development, as I described, including public education, household level activities, research and development, and so on. A short-term measure, strategic programs and projects aligned to measurable outcomes and its financial, human, and technical resources to drive all subsectors and identify major drivers, not only to drive production, but before we get to production, you look at seedlings, the availability of germplasm, animal husbandry, broodstock, and so on. If you wanted to get commercial volumes of plants, we talk a lot about cocoa and so on. Try ordering cocoa trees from the ministry. About 10 years ago, we placed an order for 12,000 citrus plants for the La Gloria estate, not me individually, but of course, the Table and Pineapple Farmers Association acting on behalf of people who would have applied for those farms and so on. Maybe if we get 100 trees altogether since then, we've gotten so much. So, whether or not we want to drive the thing, it says a lot in terms of what we put in at the other end. Our production function is very varied, of course. We have to drive growth, as I described earlier, is within investment, in the productive capacity of the sector to meet the needs of food processing and manufacturing. It is not only about final human consumption, it's not only about jams and jellies and so on. Imported primary agricultural commodity substitution, we need to secure farmers' income, stabilize commodity markets and prices. We have market information, yes, we collect price and volume data in NAMDEFCO markets and so on. But how do we transform that into market intelligence? Which farmer, which processor and so on looks at that information, where is the intelligence available to inform his or her investment decision? We think there's value, we know there are 1.3 million mouths to feed, but where are the opportunities really? And that conversation continues, value chain development and so on. But I just wanted to reflect quickly on that Sesame Street thing I opened with, which is that has made its way to 150 countries around the world. It is seen by hundreds of millions of people. It's a classic example of rural tourism in my mind. Our Minister of Tourism, the Parliament Secretary in Agriculture, for example, was just in China to learn about rural tourism. But rural tourism is alive and well, as Mr. Broadridge would have described. We've had numerous examples. The National Fruit Festival, Eat Local Day. All these things exceed 5 years in our advocacy. We do something called the Land Labs, which is annual tours to agricultural estates, exposing students, researchers, professionals like yourself, anybody, to the rural reality. And I'll tell you that although Sesame Street would have reached into these villages to showcase that pineapple, we bring people there and so on. The people that produce pineapple live in an area called George Village, part of the production, that has no potable water, or no pipe-borne water, and no electricity. But they are showcased around the world. We've done nothing to brand the area, to capitalize on investment, to put up a sign that says Sesame Street. Although people contact us now, a few people, international people, would like to come and see the site and so on, take a photo where they believe Cookie Monster would have been and all of this experience. So, the geographic indication is another thing I would want to speak to very quickly in wrapping up. Yeah. The fact that we've talked about cocoa all these years, but in my mind, when we talk about cocoa, it brings it back to a funeral. All these people make nice chocolates, all these byproducts and so on, and we pat them on the shoulder and say, well done, we want to encourage entrepreneurship and so on. But really it's like speaking at a funeral. You go to the family of the deceased, you touch them on the shoulder and you express some sympathy and so on. But it does nothing for the dead. Complimenting people on their chocolates and so on does nothing for production of cocoa in this country. And where we look around the industry, you do not see modern field architecture, new techniques, new plants. We talk about Trinidad cocoa and so on. So the Montreal farmers have gone ahead. They have capitalized on something called geographic indication, which allows them to market their product in an international arena at a higher value because it can be separated by its taste and flavor profile and so on. We are in fact trying to capitalize on the table and pineapple It's an individual effort, but of course, it does not have the institutional support as cocoa. Cocoa benefits from the UE Cocoa Research Center, the Ministry of Agriculture, the Cocoa Development Company, and so on. But of course, there is no formal environment for the pineapple, and there's no formal project that supports the efforts such as these. So this is just an example of an award I got in India in February. The text is a bit small, but that GI project of wanting to preserve the livelihoods of their craftsmen in Banaras is funded by the National Bank for Agriculture and Rural Development. Which brings me just to the wind up. We talk about food security for Trinidad and Tobago. Right now everybody's on the World Cup. Who went home, who didn't go home. So the world, hundreds of millions of people is looking at World Cup football, and I think our conversation is about this world plate. Yeah? And if Trinidad and Tobago could continue to pass its football, it's just something to think about in the global context as I just end the presentation. India, I went there in February, 1.3 billion people to feed. Trinidad and Tobago is 1.3 million. We are supposedly a little village, but out of 204 million in the state of Uttar Pradesh, their number one economic spinner is agro and food processing. So it's not unbelievable. These are some farms. We could chat about the reason I put the slides there after. This is citrus bearing in a home ornamental plant. We have not reached that stage, of course, in research in this country. I am not sure if we are even partnering to bring these as compared to having large production farms and so on. People could grow citrus in plant pots at home. Production techniques. We talk about small enterprises in the economic environment. If you wanted to make a beverage and bottle it, where are you going to find something to put crumb cork on bottle? Which store we could go in on Charlotte Street to find something like that? Very simple technologies. We don't have existing environment. And just lastly, in 2016 for the budget, I raised the point that China had just invested $450 billion to revolutionize their food and agriculture industry by the year 2020. What that means, there were three major objectives. One was to strengthen Chinese ability to do business overseas, whether it be learning English as a foreign language, business associations and so on, to strengthen their national food security, whatever that means, infrastructure, whatever it means for their local sector. But finally, it was to strengthen Chinese seed industry, and I found that very interesting. I've been following them, and here we are in 2018. If you look at the data, it says that Trinidad and Tobago imported $42 million TT in vegetable seeds for sowing. Now, this is not planting material, fruit seeds, all the other things that we can plant. This is only vegetable seeds. And of that, 19.3% came from China. But in 2018, what have we seen on the market? In Trinidad and Tobago, farmers love what we call Chinese pumpkin. Will everybody buy it? Nice squash market form. So whereas before, our farmer would grow a large pumpkin, what we call crappleback pumpkin. You know what?
Yes.
Right? So you'd buy one slice, but the farmer remained with 3/4 side of the road. Nothing to do with it, and it wastes. But with the Chinese pumpkin, is what we call the squash now, it's sold whole. You don't cut that. You buy the whole thing. So it has a few things. The taste profile of it is different. The appearance, it has the green skin as the pumpkin. We no longer used to have a white squash, like a little bottle. Remember that? You don't see that anymore. The marketing form of this pumpkin also fits your consumption habits. So that is where the research has gone in terms of food and seeds and so on. It's already here. We look at eggplant. There are about 8 different types of bygone in the country. We used to know it be long and dark color purple. Now we have white bygone, circle bygone, call it eggplant, all whatever. So that is already here. Cucumbers, the list goes on and on. So industry development, a deeper understanding of food security and protection of the men and women who feed us, I think, are still in critical need of evaluation and rethinking in the current paradigm and trust. We must build strong support for sustainable livelihoods in the sector, the already limited livelihood portfolio available to our rural people, ocean and land use, climate change action, and empower sustainability mechanisms to support farmers and fishers. So, of course, as other speakers would identify, it demands political will, it demands action, and it demands collaboration with, of course, the people who live it. I thank you for your attention.
Mr. Maraj, thank you very much for that very interesting, enlightening presentation. In fact, the phrase I came across my mind as to how do I describe this presentation, and really it is glimpses of excellence, glimpses of opportunities. And why don't we do what seems to make so much more sense than some of the things that we are doing now, that we keep doing every day? We go to work, we whatever we do, we make the case for doing certain things. We have been doing that for so many years. Things are changing, there are new opportunities, new possibilities, but we keep doing $42 million in imported seed, and we don't have an answer for that. And we talk about the foreign exchange problem. Is that the problem, or is it something else? But time is limited. We can't let Mr. Maraj escape.
I want to ask a question.
Ah, good. Otherwise, I was going to ask him one. So, okay,
Chair.
Bachelor.
Let me just add to that conversation before you close it. And you talk about how do we link the action. So in my little talk, I said that, of course, for agriculture, where my neck of the woods is concerned, I think that there must be a fundamental shift to raise the sector on the national development agenda, that's an advocacy struggle by itself. It sounds good in language, but where are we really going in terms of feeding 1.3 million people? And as I said, that's final human consumption. The manufacturing sector also puts a demand on food and agriculture, or raw material for processing and so on, right? But that's one. But if you come on the agenda, then there must be policy. And to implement policy, you need organizational design, financial, human, and technical resources, and so on. So that's the trickle down in terms of the big picture, and it comes back down to what we're going to do when, and all of that story. But in the current context of a recession, we have a smaller fiscal space. So now when we want to talk about agriculture in a recession, people don't see the returns, because of course we should have done things, planned and implemented when we had greater fiscal space. So now we could rely on this asset that we would have invested in. And that's not the story. I had a slide there just to close the point of mango trees and guava trees in India. All right? So in February I had the opportunity to visit, and in the district of Maliabad, which is known as the mango district of India, by extension is known as the mango district of the world. All right? So of course, being a person of Indian origin, people there were fascinated by, they thought I was maybe from India itself participating, and I knew English. So when we went to the Central Institute of Subtropical Horticulture in Maliabad, just as how we have research units here in Trinidad related to Ministry of Agriculture and so on, well, their main focus is on mangoes and guava. So I'll leave the mango story just to get to guava. So they're like, Maraj, tell us about guavas in Trinidad. So I said, well, we have 4 in a heap for 20. What else I could tell you about guava in Trinidad? 4 in a heap for 20. So whatever. They were, of course, thought I was cynical about everything, not knowing, maybe some of them were ignorant to the fact that we, among 34 scholars in the program, we are the only food insecure nation by definition. Right? So you have the big countries. But the point is, they propagate planting material for over 100 varieties of guava. They developed a guava through research and technology and whatever over the years called a lalit. It's big like my hand and so on. Very good for the processing because you have a lot of flesh, different characteristics. Yeah? But they've also designed models for farmers. They have small and marginal farmers. Just like how we talk about the Caroni 2-acre people, they're too small, land too small for them to do anything commercial, whatever. Same story in India, because they have big lands, huge lands. I think as the chair described it as huge lands earlier on. But of course, over generations, when the landholders die, they have 10 children, so it's split in 10 and it's split by 5 and so on. So today, landholdings are very small. The long and the short is, this lalit plant they've developed, the mature tree is no taller than I. And in a hectare, which is just over 2 acres, that specific variety produces between 40 to 60 tons of guava. Right? For a small farmer. So, think about our volume. Have you ever seen even 1 ton of guava in one place in your lifetime? I started by talking about 4 in a heap for 20. So when we talk about jams and jellies, it sounds very easy. We have all these pop-up markets, people make little pepper jelly, all these things. But again, it comes back to production. where, yes, you want people to do all these things, stop depending on the government, all these things we throw out there. But if they can even access basic raw materials or inputs, then it's difficult to see the transformation and the usefulness of the sector.
Thanks very much.
We also had our agriculture economists, and I think Mr. Omar Maraj had a very creative way of presenting and making you very excited about looking at what is happening in agriculture. I thought the way he introduced this topic, showing what is happening to some of the farmers, and we do not consider that as very important news, but certainly it contributes to a significant impact on that industry. And he showed you that the subsectors in agriculture are certainly not very much developed. We need some policy for sustainable agriculture in this country. And there's need for industry development, and certainly we need collaboration. I learned this morning here in his presentation that we spend 42 million on importing seeds. Certainly that's a concern when you think of foreign exchange. So again, let's congratulate. I also noted that most of the speakers here this morning are all UE graduates. As you all know, I'm the campus registrar, so I must make a little pitch. And when I looked at it, I saw all our UE graduates here. And I said, you know, we certainly are doing something good in university if we could pull such a nice cross-section of persons who are all skilled, knowledgeable, and people who are luminaries who we can look forward to moving the country forward because of their expertise.